To the left, we have the LG C4. To the right, we have the Samsung S90/95D, showing you the difference between, again, WOLED here and QD-OLED here as far as game mode specifically. I know a lot of people are like, oh, 144 hertz, yada, yada. Very few people will ever even see 144 hertz unless you have the absolute top of the line gaming PC, which again, not everybody can afford. And again, we're talking those PCs run upwards of 4 or 5 grand, so on and so forth. Again, not everybody's going to be doing that. That being said, a more general application is what I'm doing right here. Again, Xbox in hand. We're with Xbox Series X, and I'm just showing you what colors look like and everything in HDR. And again, I tried to give the LG some love, but there was just not much I could do. What I will say that I find really fascinating is I'm not noticing the LG C4 being as dim as the LG G3 was during my time of reviewing that. So that's a really good thing, that you can pay less money and actually have a bit of a brighter game mode experience. Again, don't know if that was maybe the result of firmware, but again, a benefit is a benefit is a benefit. Now, one thing I do want to point out is the color difference and the highlight advantage. I mean, like, this is just absolutely ridiculous. I mean, you could clearly see it clear as day. S95D/S90D blowing everything LG is doing out of the water. I'm trying to find a singular instance where LG has even a little bit of an advantage. I'm looking at the cracks on the ground. I'm looking at the color. I'm looking at the motion processing. I mean, this is game mode, game mode. LG's motion, way worse by comparison. A ton more jitters and whatnot. And it just does not immerse. I'm sorry. Like, it just will not at all. I look at it and I just see like a very green picture. Like, that's one of the big issues this year with LG with the C4. It's very green in all of their modes. Very hard to defeat that green that they have. It's like a jaundice look that they have pretty much all the time. And again, not my cup of tea. Some people might really like it, but I don't go for really green picture quality. I go for balance. I go for, again, a proper look. But again, maybe I'm just crazy. Who knows? But you get to see in a shooter what it's like. I'll play other gaming examples, of course. But we're just starting off with this. And I'm dead. Wonderful. I just got knocked off the edge, these assholes. But you get what I'm saying. Like, looking at the colors, there is no comparison. Like, we can try to pretend like there is a comparison to be had here, but there really isn't. Because what I'm seeing here on the S90 series is just amazing. It really is. Not to say that LG doesn't have good contrast, because they definitely do have good contrast. It's sharp. I'm not noticing like this over blurry effect like I noticed with some other brands. This one is definitely sharp, but again, it's not 3D. So again, not to mistake the amount of sharpness for just the unbridled three-dimensionality you're going to get on something like the Samsung S90 line of televisions. And again, I think this is a testament to just the differences and why, again, quantum dots were ever placed inside of OLED to begin with. Because I think that's very easy to lose sight of when we're talking about differences. But I mean, you're looking at it right here. I mean, it's as clear as day, as clear as it gets. It just looks gorgeous. And we can see a ton of detail in terms of the sky quality and everything. And these are things, I mean, look at the highlight and look at the color throw around that. It just looks immaculate. And again, these are the nuanced differences that you're going to notice as you, again, are on the market trying to figure out, hey, which one versus the other. I've got some cash to burn, yada, yada. Well, you're not going to really want to burn it on WOLED if you're a gamer. I mean, just for a multitude of reasons, I will be going over some of the features as well so that you can see just, again, the difference in what you are and are not getting. But again, look at the color differences. That is ridiculous. Like, ridiculous. And that is, again, for about the same amount of money, you're getting a vast amount less color. Now, I'm going to go over into photo mode and just let you see. And again, even on this screen here, just a wild amount of color and highlight that just doesn't exist on the LG, even though they have an Evo panel, which I think a lot of people would be interested to know. Okay, so now I'm going to go and grab both remotes, and I'm going to show you some of the features, okay? Because I think this is very important to do. A lot of people will want to know this. Okay, so we're going to talk about the game bar. Both display kind of the same amounts of information, more or less. I'm going to go into more settings on the Samsung, and then I'm going to go into, again, the equivalent on LG. I will say LG's menu, in my opinion, is laid out a little bit better. However, it doesn't really give me a lot to go off of. And the reason I say that is because as I look, the one thing that I'm seeing with the LG that I'm not seeing with the Samsung is that you have, again, a reduced blue light option, which is great. We don't have that on Samsung. You have a dark room mode, which I don't believe that you would need this. You have level 1, which again, this is just energy saver, okay? They're being fancy with it. It uses the ambient light sensor to dim your TV. We don't really need this, in my opinion. I'm in a dark room, and it's just too dark even for a dark room, so I find that useless. You can do the standard input, or you can boost the input lag, responsiveness, and things of that nature, which is great and all. Then you can go into VRR, G-Sync. And this is where we start to really separate these two from each other. Back in the day, Samsung used to have FreeSync Premium Pro and all that stuff. Yeah, we don't have anything like that on Samsung, at least that we could control from the option menu here. These are literally all the options that we're going to get, right? And even if you go into the expert settings, this is just for HDR. So you can go HDR 10 Advanced or Basic, or you can go HDR Game Advanced or Basic. And then again, with Samsung, if you select advanced, it'll toggle back to default settings and you'll have to make new settings for it. That's also, again, though, one of the unique things about Samsung that I like. You have 2 game modes hidden within a game mode. So basically you can say, okay, I have under HDR Game Basic, this is going to be setup 1. And then you can have setup 2 under this. And you can literally do this for each of the picture presets that they have under game mode, like FPS mode, RPG mode, standard mode. You can do this for all of those. So essentially you basically have kind of like 4 game modes in one when you talk about HDR gaming. Very, very useful. But again, it is limited after that. As you see, we don't have all of the features that LG has, like, again, the direct control to toggle on VRR and G-Sync, the direct control to toggle on AMD FreeSync Premium. I mean, and you can choose which one works best for you. Depending on what you're using, you can turn off VRR and G-Sync or vice versa. So it's a beautiful thing that you can do that, where again, you just don't have that option on the Samsung. Now, 144 Hertz mode, again, you can toggle it on. It is not going to do anything for you. It's going to ask if you want to keep this mode. You can say yes, and it'll toggle it on to 144 Hertz mode. It's for PC users. It's not for regular users, just to throw that out there. You do have the ability to change the color from violet to orange to green, which is really more of a cyan looking color. But again, it really just boils down to you have more control over certain aspects. Now, one thing I do like, again, Samsung doesn't have this feature, could use it desperately, is a white stabilizer. So you can adjust, black levels. Like if you say, oh, if they feel a little raised, you can lower this down and your contrast can get just so much better. And this is HDR. So the implications of this are pretty limitless as far as gaming, because you can go there and say, let's say I like, I don't know, I like the way 2 looks. 2 gives me some great detail. You can do that. And then again, you can just eyeball whatever looks good for you. White stabilizer, more of the same. You say you need it brighter, you can go to 0, or it's too bright, you can lower the highlights. Now that will give you better color. And again, that's kind of where I'm going with this. You can get creative with LG's game mode a little bit and get some extra sauce out of it, although you'll have to throw away some parts of picture quality that maybe you don't want to throw away. Again, me personally, I'm always okay with throwing away some extra brightness to get some extra color out. So that's exactly what I'm going to do here. We're just going to leave it like, I don't know, I'll give it a little bit, but not too much. So I'll leave it at like 15. And then you can go game contrast 100, adjust it from here. And of course the color. You can adjust all of these, the black level, the contrast, the sharpness, and all that inside of Samsung. So that's not unique to LG. But I do like that LG, in a way, is giving you way more in terms of their feature set, because the options are just not as robust. Again, you open up even the sound options. LG has a whole tab dedicated to sound, and you'll get Dolby Atmos and all that stuff, and then you have advanced sound settings, and you click on that, and then it'll pull up the rest of the sound options, where then you can go in and you can equalize and stuff like that, the regular sound options. But all you have here, surround sound. That's it. That's all you get. And it makes you wonder, like, okay, well, what else is there? And that's kind of it. If you wanted anything extra, you'd have to go into the sound options. You could do the Q Symphony setup, but you can't change the sound mode from game mode. You go into expert settings, and then you can, again, not balance out the subwoofer / equalizer. You can't balance out you can't really do much of anything. Like, I'm not lying. Like, you have like such a limited control over this. Dolby Atmos is toggled on all the time. You don't have the option to turn it off, where again, if we go to LG, you do have that freedom. So again, in the interest of being fair to LG as far as features and what it gives you, again, it gives you more freedom of customization. And I think if you're a person that you don't really care much about the picture quality, customization is everything, well, LG is where it's at, because you can see here, I can toggle off my Dolby Atmos all day, every day on that, but on Samsung, they'll tell you this function is not available, and they don't tell you how you can unlock it or what conditions need to be met to unlock it. And I think for every Samsung user, that's the most frustrating thing, especially if you're in your game and you want certain things that you're not getting. Well, it's just kind of like Samsung has this like, well, tough shit mentality, and that's just not going to work for a lot of people that like that freedom. Now, that being said, that's just that aspect of it, okay? So we've covered the game bar itself and what you can and cannot do. Again, Samsung, you can't change the color. LG, you can. You have 3 colors versus Samsung, you're going to have the color they give you. So again, LG does have by far the superior customization. That being said, though, getting back to the picture quality, that's where these two go down a different path and start looking very different. And I mean, ultimately speaking, if I'm being honest, me as a gamer, I don't give a shit about the customization of my television's user interface. I give a shit about the way my game is going to look, which is why I bought the damn thing, you know? And again, I put LG in the 144 hertz mode just to show you, like, it's not going to look better at all or be any more responsive than the Samsung just because you do that. You need something that can take advantage of that, and I just wanted to show that off because I know there are countless people that are going to be like, oh, it has 144 hertz mode, I'll just snap it into that and I'll always get 144 hertz or whatever, and that's just not how it works. You have to have something, again, that can support it, and if you don't, well, it is what it is. Now, again, looking up, and we can zoom in, you can see again, there are just massive differences in terms of color that you aren't getting as well. Highlights, again, this is where you're gonna see you have to make choices that are uncomfortable on LG. So if you remember, we lowered, again, our highlights to get better color, but again, it's not ideal because if you back up, if you'll notice, you'll see it just kind of looked like a blob there, and we don't really want that. So we can go on a white stabilizer, right? And again, I'll go away from it and kind of have it like I'm coming around a corner. And this might be almost impossible to see, but essentially when you look dead center at this light source right here, it's indistinguishable. You can't see any details, where on the Samsung, you can see all the grates and all the detail as they're supposed to be. So again, on LG, you either brighten it up really bright, which would make it brighter, or you lower it down really low. And even if you lower it down really low, you're still not going to see through the white stabilizer all of that detail. So even though I lowered it to 15, which again, it's opposite day. So the lower the number, the brighter it gets. The higher the number, the darker the highlights get. Well, I had it at 15, which was a low value, and it's literally just blown out, and I cannot see that information. Not ideal. Even when I walk up to here, I still can't see the vast majority of that information, where on Samsung, I see all of the information. These are the kinds of differences that nobody talks about when they talk about gaming, because who's going to sit there and pick out a highlight on the wall? Well, these things matter because that's the difference between you feeling more immersed with all of the details and ray tracing and the reflections. Ray tracing is a very detail-oriented technology, and that's why you have to be meticulous. You have to sit here and look at these nuanced details that most people probably say doesn't even matter, but it does, because again, you're seeing in real time. Again, there's a very clear detail issue. So I'll tell you when, and zooming in, we start seeing detail on the LG. Right about here, we're starting to see some detail, but even still, It's a far cry from the amount of detail that we have over here on the Samsung. And again, when you play the detail game, it just sucks because you have to basically be right there up on the LG to even see the detail. And I don't really like that at all. I think detail should be something that's non-negotiable. No matter what you're doing, it should just look good. Also, some of my favorite imagery to look at, lights out of like being in a building and looking outside of an open door. That will tell you a lot about how contrast is rendered too. And you can see LG has tremendously good contrast. It's just their color that falls short. So it's not that they're not getting contrast right all the time. It's just inconsistent. And that inconsistency leads to a sour gaming experience. Because again, in one instance, it looks amazing. In this one, as you can clearly see, it sours by comparison. But again, I really do believe the biggest difference that a lot of people are going to see is going to be that color difference. Now, let's say you're like, man, screw this. I'm not using game mode. I don't want to, I don't have to, and I'm not going to. I feel you. I do that often, especially if I'm playing a shooter like this. So let's just get out of game mode and go into a mode I optimize, which is the auto power mode, auto power save mode. I mean, you'll get a little bit better color. And again, motion will be better because now it's smooth and it's fluid and everything, but you aren't going to have the same color performance. So even if you wanted to go out of game mode, there's really just no way to get around the color differences that you're seeing here. And again, to give you an idea of where you would be even outside of game mode, again, this is the optimized HDR version and the auto power save mode that I've set up. And this is what it would look like in standard mode. That's disgusting. Cinema mode, that's disgusting. Cinema, or rather cinema home, and then cinema, they both look bad, doesn't matter. You have the game mode that we were just in. That's not so bad. You have good contrast. Auto power save has better color. So it's contrast versus color. Then you have filmmaker mode, which looks disgusting. No ISF modes exist for game mode in this TV. And then you have vivid mode, and you're starting to get the picture. Like, you're limited. That's the honest answer for a lot of this. And again, it won't really matter what game you play. But now, in the interest of fairness, I'm going to go back to where we saw that initial highlight, if we can, and just try to see if we can see the detail that we didn't have. And no, it's still gone. You still don't have that detail right up until you run up to it. And even then, it's a very dim highlight in comparison to what we have on something like the Samsung S90 series of television. So that's something that you will have to think about and consider. Okay, so now we're going to fire up another game and give you more of an example here. Alright, so here we are in Need for Speed Unbound. Again, giving you an idea of those reflections we were talking about. Again, it's not that LG doesn't have good reflections, as you can clearly see. The reflections are beautiful. And in this particular example, I actually like what the reflections are doing better than what Samsung is doing. And this is where a TV like the Samsung S90D, for example, would be better than the 95, because the small highlights on the 95D, they tend to dim down a little bit, where again, as I look over here on the LG, they do look really, really bright, and it does look really good by comparison, and that allows you to be able to see more nuanced differences. Like again, we're looking at the ground and we're looking at the puddle. That is a little bit more impressive than what I have over here, where that is just a little bit more in the way of looking dim. And again, these nuanced differences are things that, again, most people probably won't notice. But if you're a gamer that's buying, I don't know, thousands of dollars worth of equipment to see your games the best, you're probably going to see this. However, that being said, once you get past that nuanced difference, it's basically a slam dunk for the S90 series of televisions, particularly the 95 in this one, because you can clearly see the color quality, so on and so forth. That's not escapable. The difference between the two, I mean, you'll enjoy your LG, right? You'll be happy with it, satisfied with it, until a cutie OLED pulls up, and then you'll feel like you're inferior. Like, you won't feel like you bought a good TV at all, because the highlight alone, the highlights will really show you the next level that you were hoping that you would get when you spent the money on a WOLED that's kind of outdated. And again, this is outside of game mode. The results do differ in game mode a little bit, but not by much, which is why I'm doing it out of game mode, because I know there are people that would want to play a racing game out of game mode. But like, let's say you didn't like that approach and you want to see what it was like if I put it back in game mode, because it's not fair, because we're not doing that for the Samsung, to which I'll say, okay, here's what we'll do. We'll open up our settings. We'll go from the auto power save where I've optimized, and then we'll go back into game mode. So now it's game mode specific. Again, the picture quality is going to be really blue. It's not going to be very impressive. There are going to be a ton of jitters and stutters. I honestly think you're better gaming outside of game mode because you can on the LG, because the input lag is responsive enough for pretty much everything that's a non-competitive game to be able to get away with that kind of thing. Now, on something like, let's say, a Sony, forget about it. You'll not be able to do that this year on a Sony like the Bravia 9. That was probably the worst I'd ever experienced in my life with input lag. That being said, at least input lag out of game mode. That being said, though, when you look, both TVs do have good contrast. LG just looks a little bit smoky, and that's the only way I could really explain it right now, is it just looks smoky, like it's off. Like, I don't know, it doesn't look like a rainy day at all. It's just blue. And if there's anything that you could take away from this, it's that, you know, if you want your games to look like they actually look, the LG is going to struggle with that, because there are these weird instances of highlight clipping out a lot of your data and information, even when you lower down things to help preserve highlights. There's going to be these weird instances where you have this smoky looking image on your black. I mean, it's just a nightmare. You're going to have a lot of issues with this representation of picture quality. And again, it's not to say that it's the worst TV in the world. It's not the point. The point is you're paying $1,300 or $1,400 on sale. And outside of that, you're paying full price, which is literally like the exact price of the S90C and S90D. Pretty much any QD OLED, basically, because LG really believes that WOLED can stand up to quantum dots, and they still charge the same. I think if LG lowers the price and this becomes, let's say, $1,000 for a 55-inch, and maybe $1,400, like $1,399 for a 65-inch, maybe $1,500, that's kind of pushing it, then maybe it might be worth it. But as it is right now, it's just way too damn expensive for the lack of picture quality that it has comparatively. And you're probably seeing a lot of it now on camera. And through these examples, hopefully this is helping you make a decision as far as what game television to get, or gaming television to get. That being said, let me know what you think in the comments down below. And as always, I want to thank you guys for watching the #1 brand in honesty. Subscribe and stay tuned for more content after this. And until the next video, I'll see you guys later.